Good morning, everyone. My name is Angela Freeman. I'm the Senior Director of the Houston Minority Supply Development Council for Corporate Services. We'd like to welcome you here today for HMSDC and FEMA's first outreach and presentation of the year. We're excited that FEMA reached out to us and our Texas leaders to address our constituents about how to do business with their agencies and how to prepare for disaster recovery procurement. But before we get started, just want to review again our housekeeping rules. All mics are on mute at this time. So if you have any questions, please submit those questions in the chat box. Those questions will be addressed at the end of the presentation by our speakers, but you're more than welcome to present questions and/or comments at any time. Now, when you sign off this webinar for today, you will be equipped with information on how to do business with FEMA, also where to find opportunities, who are their primes, where to find their primes, as well as how to build relationships with FEMA and those primes before a disaster, and what are the top procurement opportunities for disaster recovery. So as Chris Como on CNN say, let's get at it. First, I'd like to introduce to you our dynamic team. We have Ms. Janera Thari, Operations and Project Manager. We also have Mr. Jared Jefferson, MBE Development Manager. At this time, I'd like to introduce you to our dynamic leadership and leaders in the minority business development space. We have President of the Dallas-Fort Worth Minority Supply Development Council, Ms. Margot Posey. We also have Director of the City of Houston Office of Business Opportunity, Ms. Marsha Murray, and President of the Houston Minority Supply Development Council, Ms. Ingrid Robinson. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Robinson for her opening remarks, and I'd like to thank all of you for participating today. Ms. Robinson.
Good morning, and thank you all so much for being with us today. And we're so excited to have FEMA and have our collaborative leaders with us to talk about how to do business with FEMA. We know that many of our businesses are trying to recover themselves, but there's also an opportunity for our minority businesses to help rebuild our communities. And so we wanted to make sure that we had time to talk to you and help you understand how to do business with FEMA, what type of opportunities are available, and to bring the leaders and allow you to talk directly to those who can impact our community and who are impacting the country by leading FEMA's organization. So I'd like to welcome and thank you for attending all of our presenters and speakers today. I'd like to start with introducing our FEMA team. And so with us, we have Lester Ingall, Deputy Chief Component Procurement Officer for FEMA, Sammy Brunson, Jr., Chief Industry Liaison for the section of FEMA, and also Brian McCreary, Director of Acquisition Operations Division for FEMA. These are the gentlemen who can truly help you to understand how to navigate such a large agency that has such a large impact on all of our businesses. So with that, I'd like to turn it over and to Lester to talk about FEMA, its efforts and its outreach to ensure that minority-owned businesses have an opportunity to compete for FEMA contracts and opportunities. Lester.
Hey, thank you, Ms. Robinson. I appreciate it. First off, I want to thank Ms. Posey, Ms. Murray, and Ms. Robinson, and the rest of you all for giving us the opportunity to have this conversation with you and to share some of the insight associated with doing business with FEMA. And not only will this information be some that you'll be able to take away relative to doing business with FEMA, but also you can utilize the same approach when it comes to other government agencies as well. Excuse me. excuse me, I'm sorry, when it comes to other government agencies as well. And we'll get into this, and I don't want to take up too much time there, Ms. Robinson, but ultimately, I have a few things that I would like to say briefly, just so we'll have a good understanding. I know a lot of you guys would ask, why? Why would FEMA want to sit down and have conversations with us here today? Ultimately, we know that there's a lot of minority disadvantaged business-owned businesses out there that need the opportunity to be able to engage in business as a prime with the government. And believe it or not, a lot of the small businesses make up majority of the business action across America, over at least a good 60-some%. And so with that being said, we wanted to share this opportunity to be able to reach out to a large group of individuals and share our opportunities, not just opportunities, to share our knowledge of how we reach out to businesses and how businesses can reach us, and also just to share some of the insight associated with the availability of some of the large contractors and small contractors as well that help support us during the disaster operational functions. So one thing that I would like us to, excuse me, go ahead, Ms. Robinson, I'll slow down.
I'm sorry, before you get into the presentation, I was remiss in providing an opportunity for our co-sponsors of this event to give a few words, because they represent a large portion of Houston as well. So if you don't mind, if I could skip back a minute and introduce Margot Posey and followed by Marsha Murray, and let them address a few minutes to the attendees, because they are important to ensuring that this information gets out to our MBEs and helping them to navigate. So I apologize. Margot, would you please share a few words with our attendees today?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ingrid. And on the behalf of the Dallas-Fort Worth Minority Supplier Development Council, I really want to take this time and opportunity to really thank Ingrid, because Ingrid had this relationship, and she could have just said, well, we're just going to do this for Houston. But she contacted me and called me and said, hey, this is a Texas issue, and absolutely it is. And so we're so excited to be part of this this presentation today. And I really want to thank FEMA for putting this on. This is the first one that you've done, I think, since the storm and everything. But there's so many opportunities that you have to share. So I'm not going to take any more time. I'm going to put my information in the chat, and you can have that. The Dallas Council also operates the Department of Commerce's MBDA Business Center. Our center is located in Dallas, but we can reach out for opportunities actually throughout the country. And we also operate the Dallas CARES Act program. So if you need any assistance from us, let us know. I'll put the information in there. But again, thank you, Ingrid, so much for including us in this really important presentation. Marsha, I think it's on you.
Good morning, everyone. I also want to thank you, Ingrid, for the invitation to partner with you on this event, and thank FEMA for agreeing to provide such valuable information to our local businesses. Like the Council, the Office of Business Opportunities focus on supporting the growth of our local businesses and promoting your success by making sure you're aware of and are able to take advantage of opportunities for doing business with a wide variety of entities. I do want to remind companies attending today of the numerous business support and development resources that the City of Houston also offers. Please visit our website to learn about all of those resources, as well as follow us on social media, because we are perpetually posting different procurement opportunities and information about all the services that we do offer. My hope today is that this session will be fruitful for your business, and I wish you the best of luck. Thank you.
All right, Lester. So now that I've gone back and recognized those dynamic women, I'm going to turn it back over to you so that we could hear from FEMA. You're the star of the show, and this is who the MBEs are here to hear from. So back to you.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. And ultimately, I don't want to disrupt the schedule. If we have a schedule and we got a time slot on there, I don't want to talk too much up front and interrupt what you all have planned. So I'll be brief. And ultimately, there's a few things that we would like to cover. You know, we want to inform all of the businesses about different opportunities and different ways of engaging the government. You know, first thing that I will say as we approach different opportunities as companies, learn the business associated with whatever government entity you would like to engage. Understand what their responsibilities are. Excuse me, understand what their responsibilities are so that you can better speak the business game when you're having conversations with them. And also another thing that I would like to make relevant with this here quick conversation we're going to have is that, the acquisition office don't develop requirements. The offices that are responsible for developing requirements are the program offices. Now, a way that you can get into those program offices and share, your core capabilities and how you can benefit these organizations, you can reach out to the FEMA Industry Liaison program, which Mr. Brunson will explain to you guys when he do his part of his presentation. That's a method of you getting in and having conversations with those program managers who are responsible for developing requirements. And the last thing I will leave with you all before I turn it over is, teaming arrangements, joint ventures, mentor proteges, and different approaches associated with you coming together as one to become a bigger force in the fact and a more of a factor in seeking bigger contracts. I know there's a lot of opportunities out there when we talk about small businesses, but the majority of those opportunities are small. When we talk about the disaster world, business is large. And in order to accomplish that, when you team together and form joint ventures, become mentor proteges, then they usually give you a better opportunity of accomplishing awards and winning the opportunities to provide these services. Thanks, Ms. Robinson.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sammy Brunson. I'm the chief of the Industry Liaison section here at FEMA. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm going to get into a little of the nuts and bolts about how to do business with us and some of the things that we do in the Industry Liaison program in the Office of the Chief Procurement Officer here at FEMA. This is just a little bit about the Industry Liaison program. We are here to help establish relationships with our suppliers and our stakeholders here within FEMA. We kind of consider ourselves as the belly button for anybody who wants to know how to do business with FEMA and to connect with our program offices. We also connect our program offices with you all in regards to having vendor presentation meetings as well. Part of our industry liaison program here is the local business transition team. This is the team that we deployed to disasters, whether virtually or physically at our joint field offices, to help coordinate the flow of inquiries that we get on how to do business with us, to make sure that those folks out in the field have that information. We also conduct market research support to identify and locate local and small and minority businesses in those areas that are within the disaster declarations, and then provide those updates back to headquarters to leadership. And now I'll get into the 4 steps that we've kind of broken the process out into in regards to doing business with us. First, we always recommend for businesses to reach out to your local Procurement Technical Assistance Center. So Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, with the Association of Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, are an entity that is part of the Defense Logistics Agency. They were created to help small businesses navigate how to do business with local, state, and the federal government. They are funded between cooperative agreements between the U.S. Department of Defense and state and local nonprofit entities. There are PTACs located in all states. They have a plethora of resources that are available to you. They offer classes to help you with proposal writing, how to market your businesses, among other things. I'm also number 2, and probably one of the most critical pieces in doing business, not only with FEMA, but with the federal government, is to make sure you get registered in the system for award management. 2 of the critical things that you'll need in order to get that registration done are your DUNS number and your tax identification number. Please remember that there is no charge for you to complete this registration. at all. Now, you will run into third-party entities, and this is important, that will charge you in order to complete your registration for you. You can utilize these third parties if you wish, but just know that the registration is free and it's something that you can complete on your own. Another thing to understand when going into this process is to make sure that your information matches on all of your documents, meaning your tax ID number, whatever name your company is under, making sure that those names match and those numbers match on all of those documents, because if the name happens to be different, it's going to hold you up in the process of getting registered. Another key thing in regards to doing business with FEMA is when you complete your SAM registration, there is an area in there for you to check, which is to be included in the Disaster Response Registry. I won't read through this entire slide here, but in short, the Disaster Response Registry, when you select that box, it means that you want to be included when national emergencies or disasters happen, and it will make your business available to those contracting officers or acquisition officials who are doing market research to know that you would like to be considered in response to those types of emergencies or disasters when they hit. So when you are doing your registration, or for those of you who are already registered, you can go back and update your registration to make sure you have that box checked as well. Number 3, and as Lester briefly touched on, we want to make sure that you understand FEMA's goals and missions. Per the Robert T. Stafford Act, our goal is to seek local companies within the disaster area for goods and services related to a disaster when it's practical and when it's feasible. So we do look to award local and small first. And these are some of the acts and regulations that you can look up to further understand how we determine who is a local vendor and if you are indeed a local vendor as well. Also, in understanding our missions and goals is the emergency support functions. So the emergency support functions may be selectively activated for Stafford Act and non-Stafford Act incidents. So with this said, our emergency support functions are functions that support us in the response to a disaster that are led by different agencies across the government. I'm going to get into that on the next slide as well. And then also making sure that you reach out to your state emergency management agencies. Each state has an emergency management agency that coordinates the activation and the use of resources that would be needed by the local governments within that state. So once a disaster declaration is signed by the President of the United States at the request of the governor, FEMA, then the full resources of FEMA can be used in that event, which in turn FEMA does serve at the pleasure of the state. So the state coordinates where those resources go and so on and so forth. To get back to the emergency support functions, this lists out the emergency support functions and which agencies actually lead those functions. So with that being said, I want to make sure I reiterate to you all, these emergency support functions are what make up the support for a national event. So when you're looking for opportunities, we want to make sure that you aren't solely looking at FEMA opportunities. All of these different agencies that you may see here listed as leads have a part of responding to a disaster, and they all have their own contracting shops. So not only do you want to be looking at FEMA for opportunities, but you want to look at the United States Army Corps of Engineers. You may want to look at the United States Department of Agriculture and so on and so forth, because depending on the disaster and what emergency support functions are activated in supporting, you may find requirements under any of these agencies that are listed, and even some that aren't listed here. And step 4, making sure that you are monitoring our contracting opportunity sites. So the Federal Business Opportunity site, which is now beta.sam.gov, is an opportunity that, is a site that the entire federal government uses, which is managed by GSA for federal procurement opportunities. Also, we have Unison Marketplace, which encompasses the DHS marketplace, which is a online marketplace that we use that is almost like it is a reverse auction type of tool that we utilize to post our requirements on as well. And then also a Department of Homeland Security system is the Acquisition Planning Forecast System, which is a system that the entire department uses to include FEMA, CBP, ICE, and all of those components under DHS to give a snapshot and give small businesses a chance to understand what opportunities are coming in the future, and so that you can better prepare yourself when and if those solicitations come out, so that you can better prepare yourself to create your proposals and have those drafted. Now I'm going to get into our procurement needs during most disasters. This slide here speaks to our top commodities that we procure during a disaster. Some of those are probably familiar to you all, from water, meals, tarps and blankets are probably some of the ones you see all the time, infant and toddler kits, consumable medical supplies. And then also for disasters, we typically stand up a joint field office. So with standing up that joint field office, once a location has been found, we need those things and we'll contract for those things typical to setting up any office structure. Whether it's us leasing copiers, leasing generators, having to get office supplies, shredded bins. And when we set up the locations for survivors to register, we have needs for portable toilets and things of that nature. Janitorial services, security guards are also two of the big services that we typically procure in order to support our joint field offices. So in that vein, I'm going to turn it over to Brian McCreary, who's the director of our acquisition operations division, so that he can speak to you about some of the things that we may be procuring or have procured in response to these latest events in your state of Texas.
Hi, everyone. Brian McCreary. Currently provide oversight for all of FEMA's acquisition operations activities. In the past, I've served as a contracting officer and led our contracting efforts for a number of disasters. So I have a lot of experience in the field with supporting disasters and response activities. Just to cover a few things, in general, our immediate requirements that Mr. Brunson went over here, they do include a lot of things that are needed immediately upon disaster declaration, or sometimes even we pre-position them ahead of time while an emergency declaration is being prepared. These are usually covered for the most part through some pre-existing contracts that we have, pre-position contracts for these typical commodities or services that we require. Now, in accordance with the Stafford Act, also as Mr. Brunson mentioned, we are required to transition then, once we issue these initial orders, if those services or commodities are needed on past the initial response phase, we do attempt as soon as practicable to compete that among local area vendors and transition over to use of local area vendors. As Mr. Brunson also mentioned, not all of our requirements, not all of the disaster requirements certainly are fulfilled by FEMA. We are the lead agency in managing the federal effort overall in response to and recovery from disasters, meaning that we, FEMA, for certain needs can mission assign any of the other agencies that are involved to fulfill a requirement request from the state, but they may use in fulfilling that, they may use internal staff, or they may contract, on their own for those services or supplies, or use existing contracts that they may have in order to support. All of us in the federal agencies are required to maximize the use of local area vendors for disaster requirements. And just to elaborate on that, as you saw, what the definition was for local area vendors, typically, a lot of our disasters may not include, a full state, as this current one does with the whole state of Texas. It may include in the declaration just certain counties. Our local set-asides can, when we make local area set-asides, we make them to companies that are within the counties that are declared in the declaration, or a subset of those counties if we can narrow it down further. Typically, we would set it aside, and it would be for any companies basically with their home office located in that area, or primarily doing business in that area. And one thing to watch for that, when FEMA, although we have the ability to sole source procurements under emergency conditions, we really strive to compete the majority of our requirements and really try to limit the use of that sole source authority. That said, we basically have limited time to do market research, so we'll try to get that done in the field. We'll try to identify, and we try to team up with business organizations such as this, or with any type of like a local business or small business liaison office that the state or localities may have, in order to share requirements and to quickly determine whether there are local area small businesses that are capable and willing to perform the requirements. So that's how we try to determine that quickly in the field. And, as also Sammy mentioned in his presentation here, all of our requirements, when we're competing them, will be advertised in beta.sam.gov. While you register in sam.gov, you're going to find the business opportunities in beta.sam.gov. Those, even when we're using, we do use the Unison marketplace, which was also mentioned. Even when a requirement is being advertised on Unison, and we're using that tool, that's where you would submit your bids for those products or services. There will also still be a notice in beta.sam.gov that directs you to, that provides an explanation of what the requirement is, and then directs you to Unison's site for submission of your bid or proposal. So, monitoring beta.sam.gov is the most important factor here. Now, also, when we're doing local area set-asides, we can do a full set-aside, which means we will only accept bids from vendors that can that we can verify are local area vendors, or we can do a set-aside if we're unsure that there are local area vendors that are going to be able to perform the work and that are going to bid on it. We can put in our solicitation, which is posted on the beta.sam.gov, that we're going to do a preference. So that preference would basically state that if you are for local area businesses, there's going to be a price offset that's going to give preference to those vendors over non-local area vendors. So I just wanted to clarify that these things will all be identified in the solicitation or the synopsis in unison of the requirement. Typical services and that was listed. We do perform as Mr. Brunson mentioned. The typical ones are those that require those types of services and supplies that are required to run our field offices. There's many different types of field offices that we may set up, and that's based on the size and the coverage of the disaster. We have disaster recovery centers. We may set up individual field offices outside, satellite offices from our central joint field office. So in order to operate those, that's when a lot of these type of business support operations type requirements come into play. And we would be looking typically for local vendors for these services and commodities. Security guard services are usually a large one because all of our facilities have to have security in order for us to operate. A lot of these others, like I said, tarps, plastic sheeting, all these types of immediate needs are typically covered under our advanced contracts, which we compete. Typically, they go for maybe up to 5 years, and then we recompete those at the headquarters level. And we do try to maximize our use of small and disadvantaged businesses when doing any of our contract competitions at the headquarters level as well. We also, during disasters, the states are given basically grants, and so the state can fulfill their own needs through their existing means, or they can go out and contract themselves for direct support of survivors within their states and get reimbursed through the grant process by FEMA. It's when we have a process in place whereby when the state really needs assistance with fulfilling a certain requirement, they'll submit a resource request to FEMA. And then if it's something we can, if it's something we can fulfill with internal stock or internal personnel, we'll do that. Otherwise, they will send the requirement to acquisitions, FEMA acquisitions, who will then, either go out with a contract to fulfill those requirements. So the other requirements that are necessary really vary by disaster. It can get into providing direct support for survivors, things that you would typically that the state may typically provide, but based on the need, they're just unable to fulfill. So FEMA does a wide variety of services and stuff based on the severity of the disaster and the location. Now, as far as doing business with us, that's the primary information to be aware of, and really to really pay attention to beta.sam.gov and watch for these opportunities. Being registered in SAM and having your DUNS number is very important because all of these requirements are urgent when we're out at disasters. You have very little time to plan, and we have to get awards made often in very short time frames in order to meet our needs in the field. So being prepared like that and having your ducks in a row is very important to allow us to make awards when when we can, as soon as possible. That's really all I have. If I guess when we get to the question and answer phase, I can answer any questions that anyone has. Sammy, did you have anything else to add?
Yes. So I'll go ahead and close us out here. This slide just talks about a few helpful tips for you all who are interested in doing business with us. Promoting your services in government-wide databases, exploring GSA and the GSA schedule. Again, as Brian reiterated on, making sure that you're monitoring opportunities on beta.sam. That's a really key part, especially when you talk about during disasters. Requirements and needs may change by the hour. So monitoring those things multiple times a day would be really beneficial. Also, if you want to submit your company's capabilities or interested in presenting your products to our colleagues and our subject matter experts in our program offices, there is a vendor profile form that is located on the How to Do Business with FEMA website where you can do that. Just remember that submitting the vendor profile form does not guarantee you a contract award, and it does not guarantee a meeting with those program officials, but though your capabilities will be reviewed and put in those hands of those subject matter experts to further understand what it is that you're bringing to the table, and if that can support our mission. Something else that I wanted to point out as well is when you're looking at these opportunities on beta.sam or whether it's on Unison, is to really review and read through them so that you understand what those requirements are. Like Brian touched on, a lot of the things that we do, especially in the field, are time sensitive. So those delivery times, those quantities, and those details that are in those solicitations, if those are things that and requirements that you can meet, then sure, go ahead and submit your proposal. If it's something where you may not be able to meet whatever those needs or those requirements are, and you may need to partner with someone else, do that. But I would not recommend bidding on a solicitation just to bid because you may have it, but if you know that it's something that you cannot deliver on or something that you can't meet those delivery times or get those quantities, you may want to reconsider. And like I said, a lot of those things that we do in the field, a lot of them may affect people's lives literally, and may put people in life or death situations, especially when you talk about meals, water, and things of that nature. And on that note, that is the end of this presentation, but here is our contact information for the Industry Liaison Program, website, email address, the website and email address also for our small business program. Please make sure that you go to these sites and peruse them and review them. There is a lot of useful information on these sites. It will walk you through the National Response Framework, which talks about how the nation responds to disasters and events. We have, there's part of the site that has all of our advanced contracting contracts on there that will let you know who those prime contractors are, what the requirement is. So please make sure that you actually take the time and go review those sites and familiarize yourself with our mission, the National Response Framework, and all of those different things that are listed on there. And on that note, I will turn it back over to, yes.
I'm sorry, before you wrap up, this is Lester, guys.
Okay.
I wanted to say something just to finalize this as well, please. So quickly, relative to what Sammy and the rest of the team just presented to you all, one of the number one things that we want to convey to you is that we need to know that you exist. We need to know that you're out there. We need to know what type of services do you provide? What type of supplies do you provide? Another thing that I can't recall if we posted or not, there's something out there known as the Disaster Registry. Please go into the Disaster Registry and register within that Disaster Registry. We actually use it during times of disasters, and we go and look for different vendors and their capabilities. So I would advise you all to do that. And ultimately, another one of the things that I would like to say is be sure that you take advantage of your small business individuals help us in the process of trying to reach smaller businesses and disadvantaged businesses, and again to those individuals by way of contracting. Now, as the Deputy Chief Procurement Officer for FEMA, one of the responsibilities that I have is to make sure that we execute and spend that average of $2 billion a year in disaster contracting. We push hard to try and reach out to smaller businesses and more specifically disadvantaged businesses, so we can try and promote growth and opportunities for those types of businesses. Please take advantage of it. This will not be our last time communicating with you all. I have made a commitment to Ms. Posey, Ms. Murray, and Ms. Robinson that we'll come back. We'll make ourselves available for you all to have open conversations and open dialogue so that we can share different experiences and learn some of the issues that you have as an organization and try and help you solve some of those issues. So I just want you to be aware that this will not be our last time. It's our first time, but it won't be our last time. Hey, thanks for having us.
Lester, we really appreciate you making that commitment, and we are looking forward to follow up on this with you and your organization. And so we'll turn it over to Ms. Janera Theory, and she's going to lead us through our Q&A.
Alrighty, good afternoon, everyone. So I see a lot of questions. I'm going to go in order in which they were received. So the first question is going to come from Ken. He says, if I have an SBE, will I be able to be eligible to gain assistance? Who would like to take on that question?
Ms. Terry, can you expound on that a little more when you say SBE?
Small Business Enterprise.
Small Business Enterprise, and that's established with the state, correct?
Absolutely.
No, I think that is the federal designation that they meet small business standards. Would they also be able to meet and be able to compete for these opportunities?
So usually, Brian and Sammy, if you don't mind, I'll take it. So usually how we identify what type of set-asides that usually set aside, actions for specific socioeconomic categories and business sizes within the United States. We utilize the Small Business Administration standards under their socioeconomic categories. And those are the standards that we use in the process. So one thing that I mentioned to you all is to reach out to the program offices, and when you have an opportunity, when a draft solicitation is out there or open solicitation and there's opportunity for Q&A with that solicitation, you should reach out to this and your capability. What that will do, that acquisition office strategize on what approach and how they would set aside a specific requirement. So what would happen is, being a small business, you would identify your capabilities, your business size and structure. And once we receive 2 or more in a small business category, we usually start conducting market research outside of that market method to make sure that we are structuring this properly when it comes to us announcing this and making this available. And what that do for you all as a company, usually we can restructure and take a larger requirement and section it off and split it up into multiple requirements, or it'll push us towards, identifying a certain percentage that large prime contractor or small, depending on who win that contract, will be responsible and required to go out and subcontract to small businesses for whatever that percentage is that we identify within the solicitation. Brian, did I understand?
Okay, thank you for that. One of the biggest questions that we have received is if the FEMA presentation is going to be available to the registrants. So are we able to publish this?
Yes, the council. Yes, the council does have a copy of the presentation, and they are free to distribute that to the attendees.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, so the next question is, what is considered local business, citywide or statewide, and what is the picking order for these businesses? Who is going to take that question on?
I can. We're good. The the businesses that would be considered local are going to be determined by the declaration. The disaster declaration that comes out identifies the counties within each state that are within the declared disaster. Our local area set aside will identify whether it's all those counties or it could be a subset of those counties. The CO is allowed to restrict it further down into a subset of the counties that are considered in the declaration. So the solicitation needs to make that clear. When it says it's a local area set aside, it will also within it list the counties that are included in it. And just along those lines too, identifying whether a business is local area or not is sometimes difficult. So in order to help us do that and make that determination, in the solicitation, it may require you to submit certain documentation or evidence that supports that you are considered a local area vendor. And like I said, the local area vendor, it's not cut and dry totally. It's basically, whether your primarily your headquarters is there within the location, or it's your primary place of doing business based on your sales records. So it's not always, we have companies that try their best to kind of game this and try to be considered local areas in multiple places, but we try our best to make sure that, that's why we may ask for that information. It's to make sure that we are getting the funds back into the local economy and really truly dealing with a local area business.
Thank you for that, Mr. McCreary. So the next question is going to be, if a supplier can provide the top commodities, how can the supplier get ahead of the need to be included in the procuring process? So who's going to take that question on?
I can take it. Oh, go ahead, Sammy. Go ahead. I like to spread it around. Go ahead, Sammy.
Okay. I was going to say, when you say ahead of the procurement process, I think I could best answer it like this. Those advanced contracts that you see on the website and that Lester mentioned earlier, those contracts are contracts that we utilize normally in the initial response to an event. So those contracts, just like any contracts, have an expiration period. So when those contracts are put back out for solicitation, anyone is able to bid on those contracts to become a prime for those contract opportunities. Also, I would say when things occur, because those primes may have a subcontracting plan within those contracts, nothing forbids you from contacting them to try to get a subcontracting opportunity if that's the route that you would like to go as well. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you very much for that answer. So the next question is, it is very important that a small, diverse business participate in the market research. This is the only way that they can stop a sole source to go out for RFP. Sorry, that's not a question, that's a comment, but it's good to know. The next question is there a program that awards contracts prior to disasters in an area so that when the disaster happens or is predicted to happen, a vendor company is able to know if they will be needed in advance and are ready?
So I'll take that, guys. So actually, that's our purpose for doing what we're doing today. You know, this is giving us an opportunity to reach out and figure out who you are. As I mentioned earlier, we need to learn that you exist and the type of services and your core capabilities that you provide or supplies. So our advanced contracts used to be called pre-position contracts. Those are contracts that we go out and solicit for during a non-disaster season. Our disaster season, hurricane season for us, runs from June until the end of November. So we are in the process of trying to put contracts in place prior to the start of the availability of different functions or services or supplies that may be on the horizon. Another thing that I would advise you all to take a look at so that you will be aware of what's coming out the following year. August the 30th is the deadline for us to publish. And when I say us, I mean DHS and all of its components. ICE, USCIS, and all the other CBP, we're required, our programs are required to publish all upcoming procurements that will be taking place that following fiscal year. So if you look at what's known as the acquisition forecast, and I'm not sure if you have to register or not, Brian or Sam, I can't remember, but I would advise you to go into that system and start looking at the availability of future requirements that are on the horizon. It will give you a brief description of what those requirements are, and it'll give you an opportunity to know who those program folks are who are responsible for those as well. And you having conversations with those program individuals in advance of it being solicited, give the program folks an opportunity to better before we go out. I hope that answered
it. Would you mind if I add to that, Lester?
Please.
Hi, everyone. Yeah. And in addition to, we have our advanced contracts, which are for our primary, those things that we've identified that we really need up front at almost all disasters. So we try to cover that. Now, we also have 10 regional offices, and they have their own contracting officers. And obviously, there's these support services that we typically always go out to on a local capacity. What we want our regional contracting shops to do is to be reaching out to their state and locals where these disasters typically happen, and setting up those types of agreements for certain things that we need that we always go to locally that are not covered by our advanced contracts. So, it would help to connect with our regional office there in Region 6 and let them, make them aware of your requirements too. Now, we can do that through our industry liaison program. Sammy has relationships with our regional contracting officers, and we involve them when we go out and actually do site presentations, for local vendors at disasters. So, that's where the real connection between FEMA and the localities and states it needs to take place is from our regional levels that support your states.
And can I say something else with that as well, Janelle?
Of course,
apologize.
Go ahead.
So just to add to that, guys, if you all would take a look at the Post-Katrina Emergency Reform Act, they actually identified by statute requirements that we are required to have in place in advance. So the advanced contracts are those requirements that we have in place in advance of disasters so that we don't be reactive and be more proactive, which allow us the opportunity to better negotiate, cost more and more cost efficiencies for executing contracts. That's just something just to give you a little information on where you can go and see some of the statute requirements for us to have certain services and supply type
So I'm back. Mr. Engel, your internet connectivity was getting a little staticky. So we will circle back to the completion of your statement. If you want to drop that in the chat for us, I'll go ahead and post that to the group. So the next question is there a directory or database for FEMA where local area vendors can submit their capabilities?
I can take that question. On that last slide in the presentation where I talked about the vendor profile form, so you can submit your capabilities via the vendor profile form, and we, being the industry liaison program, will make sure that your capabilities get in front of those program SMEs for whatever that service or commodity is that you may be providing. And also to those regions where the event has occurred. So in your case, it would be our Region 6 office in Denton, Texas. We will make sure that those capabilities do get in front of the appropriate subject matter experts.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for that. The next question is, are set-asides determined by the market research?
Yes, that's the only thing we have to go by in order to determine basically if there are 2 or more small businesses that have been identified that are capable of doing it and that we expect that can submit an offer on it, we are going to set it aside. It gets a little more difficult based on the limited time at disasters to get down to further differentiating between all of the various small business categories. But we try to do that as best as possible through market research. And that's usually, that is what guides us in determining whether we can set it aside or not.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And so the next question is, other than market research, are there any other services needed by FEMA during a disaster? For example, accounting, marketing, engineering, legal?
I can take that, and I don't know if Brian, you want to as well. But I think in regards to accounting and those types of things, we do have those departments here within FEMA. So I don't think it's often that we actually need to contract for those types of services. But every disaster is different and the needs are different. But I think from an administrative standpoint, when it comes to finance, accounting, and things of that nature, those are typically things that are handled in-house by FEMA personnel.
That's correct, Sammy. Yeah, for professional services, typically it's very few requirements. Like Sammy said, we have FEMA personnel that respond to these, that are in those kinds of professions with legals and those other ones that you mentioned. We have those staff, plus, as if the disaster is going to go on for a longer period of time, or even be transitioned into a possibly a long-term recovery office, what we do is actually go out for local hires for these folks with these capabilities, and actually bring them on board to FEMA as local hires or temporary employees.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for that. So someone asked if you would please provide the website to submit bids. If you could just drop that in the chat for us, I will go ahead and make that announcement to the Q&A and submit it there. The next question is, are NGOs considered as primes? If so, how can suppliers develop relationships? Is NGOs such as Association of the Blind? Who's going to take that question?
Hey, can you guys hear me again? I apologize.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I'll
Can you
take that.
repeat the question? Oh, go ahead. Let's.
So it sounds like they're talking about NGOs. How can NGOs in the process of an NGO become a prime? I tell you what, I'll let somebody else take this one.
Okay. Sammy, were you going to respond?
I was going to ask you to repeat the question. I think Brian may be better versed, but you go ahead and repeat the question, please.
Yes, I'll repeat it. So, are NGOs considered as primes? If so, how can suppliers develop relationships? NGOs such as Association of the Blind.
I would say in some instances, yeah, they are kind of a prime, but you know, that obviously they could subcontract work that they are providing for FEMA, the NGOs. We don't necessarily have a contract with those NGOs. Sometimes they are on a voluntary basis or what have you. But certainly, you know, it may be that in providing the services that the NGO does, they may have the need for contractor support just as we do.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McCreary, for that. Okay, so the next question is, how does FEMA determine how long they are in an area of disaster and how long does it take to make awards? Who's going to take that question?
I can take that question. As we're there in an area for as long as we need to be honest. That could be months, a year, it could be a couple years. I think we were still had an active office down responding to Katrina for 10 plus years. So, you know, I think that's all determined by the magnitude of the disaster and what is needed to continue to support that community wherever and whoever was affected.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Brunson. So the next question is, what current opportunities do you have now that we could take advantage of, and where can those be accessed?
Our current opportunities are obviously still all listed on, as we said, beta.sam.gov. And as far as for the Texas support, we've only so far had several requirements that we've actually placed against our advanced contracts. We do have some additional requirements coming in, but we haven't as of yet set up a JFO, so we don't have that local office and those support requirements yet. We will be getting those, and you know, basically at this point it is to watch beta.sam.gov and to send something into FEMA industry if you are, and register in that disaster registration site if you're interested in providing and identifying what you can provide to support the Texas disaster declaration.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McCreary, for that. Let me get back to the questions. So we have a question that says, does FEMA require primes to subcontract with small businesses?
If the prime is a large business, yes, they have to submit. If they're a large business, they have to submit a subcontracting plan in accordance with the goals that FEMA has for our small business, for all the various small business types. So yes, if we're making an award and the prime's a small business, they are also encouraged to contract with other small businesses, but they're not required to. But they are required to perform 50% of the cost of the services have to be incurred by the prime contractor if it's a small business set aside.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McCreary. So the next question is, I see that the enrollment period is closed for transportation on the FEMA website. Is there any other way we can enroll for this year, or do they have to wait for next year?
Those requirements for the transportation, those are their requirements. So I would believe you would have to wait until the enrollment period opens back up for the next enrollment period. There may be, however, and monitor beta.sam for an announcement. They may be doing a industry day for their program. Typically, it occurs around the end of May, beginning of June. They do an annual industry day to talk through the transportation program to better prepare you to submit that paperwork and those things necessary to become a transportation provider.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Brunson, for that. Okay, so the next question is, has COVID changed requirements for businesses to do business with FEMA? Who's going to take that?
It has changed. Yes, I can. Yeah, it certainly has, depending on the, obviously, whether it has to be in person or not. We do require that contractors follow CDC guidelines for operating in a COVID environment. We had to take a look at all of our pre-existing contracts and basically have a conversation with our program office and the contractor to determine what needed to be revised or incorporated into that contract to account for this and to account for operating in a COVID environment. Those things that we could do virtually, we allowed them to do virtually. Then we had to add in all of the safety precautions that are required, especially for the our responder lodging camps and those types when we're setting up facilities where folks are going to be coming through, and all of the special cleaning that's needed for our facilities. So yeah, it has changed the game somewhat, and we've tried to adjust as best as possible, and we try to capture that in our statements of work when we put our requirements out as to what is going to be required along those veins with when the contractor, so they know how to include that in their proposal.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much for that answer. So the next question is going to be, do you get opportunities to repair homes through FEMA, or is it through local agencies? Who's going to take that question?
I can take it, Janera, but I won't turn on my camera because I think it's interrupting my ability to communicate and it's having it robot and all that good stuff. So if you want me to, I can take that.
Okay, yes, please. We can hear you clearly now without your camera on.
Okay, good. And I apologize to everybody for not being able to utilize the camera, but ultimately the ability to repair homes, we have multiple approaches to be able to do so. So we have an individual assistance program under our recovery directorate, and that individual assistance program is who manage the construction of repairing homes. Now, majority of the times what we try and do, we advise homeowners after we complete a housing inspection through a housing inspection services contract, if they register through the system to receive government support, we usually encourage them to utilize their personal homeowners insurance policy. And then usually some of those who don't have it, they still have the opportunity to register and receive government support. So by virtue of receiving that government support, we have a contract in place. It used to be known as our individual assistance, technical assistance contract, which was one of our pre-position contracts. But when you go out there and take a look at our pre-position contracts, you'll see a contract that's known as individual assistance support contract. And what that contract does, that allows us as the organization to go out and repair homes if we need that construction capability. And so we could go local, but we need to know that you exist. And what we would do as our organization develop requirements, we would, reach out and try and learn, do you exist out there in your capabilities, and can you handle the magnitude of the construction services that we're looking for? And then that will inform us if we can go to you all locally, or if we need to utilize that IASC contract That's an acronym associated with the Individual Assistance Support Contract, which has the construction capability. That's one of our pre-position contracts, also advanced contracts that's in place for us to be able to respond quickly and don't be reactive in the process. But usually when construction takes place of a home, that gives the organization time to develop requirements and the opportunity to look for you all out there who can do this. So that's why it's very important for you to identify yourself in that disaster registry that I talked about through our industry liaison program and our local business transition teams and different things like that, so that we'll know that you're out there, and we may have that opportunity to set that aside and issue a contract to you all because you have the capability of doing so. Thanks, Junior.
Thank you. Okay, so the next question we have is, can you speak to FEMA's involvement in electrical power line restoration services due to natural disasters and finding qualified companies to do the work in the event of hurricanes, tornadoes, windstorms, and winter freezes? Who's going to take that question on?
I can take it. Typically with the power restoration, that is, we have gotten into it to some degree and basically procuring power transmission poles and some other things and helping with the movement of those. But for the most part, that's mission assigned to Department of Energy, and FEMA is not typically directly involved with the actual power restoration mission. It's usually handled by the state through their grant. Like I said, that they have, they would use their state or local power companies to do that and take care of that mission.
All right, thank you, Mr. McCreary, for that response. So the next question we have is, someone who is an approved TSP for FEMA was not contacted for Texas disaster. They are wondering who is the liaison that they would contact for transportation so that they can be added to that list. Who's going to take that question on?
The contact information for the transportation program is listed on the FEMA.gov how to do business with FEMA page. You'll see a part that says transportation services, and they should have their contact information listed right there. I'll put the link to that page in the box here in a second. I'll go look it up and put it in there for you all.
Thank you very much for that response. Okay, so the next question is, can someone go into more details on how we can submit our capability statement? Is this separate from the vendor profile? I feel like we've already addressed this question. So I know that the website is beta.sam.gov, and that's basically the place. But does anybody have anything that they would like to elaborate on for this question, or should we move forward?
I can just reiterate, for you to submit you want to send your capabilities into the industry liaison program via the vendor profile form, which is on the website at the very bottom of the website. When you go to FEMA.gov, how to do business with FEMA, you can find it right there on that page, and that's the form that you fill out to submit your capabilities. In regards to the disaster response registry and being available in that system, which we use for market research purposes as well, you want to make sure that when you do your registration, you check that box to be included in the disaster registry. So when we go in that system and utilize it, we can see your capabilities and the fact that you want to be included in emergency and disaster type opportunities. We can view you there as well.
All right, thank you for that response, Mr. Brunson. So the next question is coming from a Houston certified MBE. They said that they have a very small business, and they're asking that in order to bid on large contracts, can they bid and partner with a bigger company that does not meet the small business standards if they already work with them? So who's going to take that question on?
I will. This is Brian. Hey, yes, you can team or subcontract with other companies. Now, if the requirement is advertised as a small business set aside, like I said, there are subcontracting restrictions that only allow, if we're doing a small business set aside, then it only allows the small business to subcontract out up to, I'd say, 49%. You really have to do 51% of the cost of labor have to be incurred by the prime, the small business that we're contracting with. But other than that, yes, you're free to team or subcontract with other large businesses.
Okay, thank you for that response, Mr. McCreary. So the next one we have is, can anyone talk about the mental health vendors opportunities? So who's going to take that question on?
This is Lester. I apologize again for not being able to show my face as I speak. So when we talk about mental health capabilities now, we usually utilize the Federal Occupational Health in the process of doing so under HHS. So FEMA doesn't focus on managing the mental health side of things. We usually require, or we usually look to HHS to manage that for us. So that's not something that we do.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. So we have another question. It's stating that they have a new product for the construction industry that they would like to present to FEMA. They're asking how they would go about finding the right liaison to submit that presentation. Who's going to take that one on? Mr. Brunson, I see that you're talking, but you're currently on mute. Can you unmute yourself, please?
Sorry about that. Yes,
okay.
Sorry about that. You would submit those the same with your capabilities directly to the industry liaison program, and also feel free to email us with any questions or concerns that you may have when you send that in as well. So you can email those directly to us, and we will see that they get to the appropriate program SMEs to review.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Brunson. So the next question we have is, are you aware if temp staffing agencies are often used with FEMA? Who's going to take that question?
This is Lester. So we don't usually reach out and use temp staffing agents. So what we usually do when we contract to a contractor for a specific service is that contractor's responsibility to attain the personnel in the quantities that we're seeking. So whatever contractor that is, that's the one that usually utilizes staffing, support services in an effort to do so.
All right, thank you, Mr. Engel. So the next question we have is, which department of FEMA handles emergency preparedness in the area of water, since it is such a major problem during Gulf State hurricanes? Who's going to take that question?
This is Lester again. And I'll shut up after this, guys. So usually our logistics management directorate is responsible for water. Now, our contracting shop is the one that execute contracts for anything that we do within our organization. So we're responsible for all FEMA contracting. So you can reach out to our industry liaison program, and they can, as you inquire about different, capabilities, they can guide you in the right direction. But ultimately, water falls under the realm of our logistics management directorate. Thanks, Janair.
Thank you. So the next question we have is, are there any opportunities for training and development within FEMA?
Yes. Hey, this is Brian. We do have opportunity. Yeah, I'm assuming that you're talking about training, course development requirements, doing course development and revision, and we do advertise for those quite frequently. We have several learning sites, the National Emergency Training Center and the Center for Domestic Preparedness that we support, that are FEMA activities, and their whole mission is training emergency responders, firefighters, first responders, that type of thing. So we do quite a bit of that. We also contract for curriculum development for internal staff for our FEMA folks, and we have actually one on the street now being solicited for that type of service. So again, you know, those are advertised on betasam.gov.
Okay, wonderful. I know that we only have 5 minutes left on the event, so I'm wondering if we can maybe gather the rest of the questions and send them over to our FEMA team to provide those answers at a later time. I really want to be respectful of everybody's time. So if we all think that that would be a great solution, then we can go ahead and begin our wrap-up process. Would that be okay with everyone on the FEMA team?
Sure, Janelle.
Okay, wonderful. So I'm going to pass it over to Ms. Robinson, and I want to thank all of our registrants for submitting your questions. Give us about a week or so to get those responses back to you, as we do want to be respectful of our FEMA team's time. So I'm going to let you have it, Ms. Robinson.
Hey, thanks, Janera. So thank you all for attending today. I won't take up all of the time, these 5 minutes, because I want to allow our to be able to share any final insights that they'd like to have. So Marcia and Margot, if you would like to share anything, I would like to give you this opportunity to speak to our attendees. But we thank you for being our partners. We thank FEMA for this time. And Lester and Sammy, we know that we can keep you accountable, and that we know we can count on you to keep your word, at this being not the first and only time that you'll be with us. So I want to start with, I guess, Marcia this time, and see if you have any closing remarks that you'd like to share.
The only thing I really want to share at this point is just to acknowledge the amazing information that all of our speakers provided today. Just a wealth of information. And I think there's a lot of opportunities for our businesses with FEMA. So thank you so much again for providing that information today.
Margot?
Well, I certainly echo Marcia's comments in thanking the FEMA team. They've just done an excellent job. I'm looking forward to a continuous relationship with them and identifying actual opportunities. I can't wait for the recording to come out on YouTube. And I think the sooner we can get that out, even if we don't have the questions back from the FEMA team, we can still be pushing that information out, because timing is everything, as we all know. So the sooner we can get that out, the better. And again, I can't say enough about Ingrid. Because she had the foresight to, you know, pick up the phone and say, hey, this impacts all of Texas. And how do we get this done? And really, how do we take care of our MBEs? And so I know the folks in Houston know how diligent Ingrid is, but that's just another example. And so I want to, again, thank you, Ingrid, for including me in this process. I think it is so important for our MBEs, and I'm hoping people were able to take advantage of it. And that's why the YouTube presentation is going to be so important for those people that didn't get to see it, because this was quick notice and people are still trying to put pieces together from the store. But thank you so much.
You're welcome. So I'll just end with the closing by saying, not only do we want to provide you with access and information to FEMA, but we also want to make sure that you take advantage of the resources that are available. So as Margot mentioned, they have an MBDA center. If you're having questions about putting together your proposal, you have questions about how to navigate the system, and you're in that market or you're anywhere in the state of Texas, the MBDA center can help you to do that and help you to partner with others. HMSDC is here to help and support, help you to identify companies to do strategic alliances with. And I can't talk about all the resources that they have in that Portia and her team is putting together to make sure that they're able to respond. So please not only think that you're alone in this, but we're here also for questions and answers and to connect you to our partners and make sure that we get you the resource that you can be to help you be successful. So when you succeed, we all succeed. So thank you so much for coming. We appreciate it. Thank you, FEMA team, for some valuable information. We look forward to putting it on our website and sharing this audio recording. Margot, we will do that with your organization so the information can get out there. And I'll ask all the small businesses, MBEs, WBEs who are on today to make sure you share this information with your colleagues, your peers that you work with, and let them know about the opportunities and how to connect and how to get more information. So thank you all for being here with us, and we will talk with you all soon.